Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Love is Orchestrating Everything. Now, I know, you may think, what do you mean love is orchestrating everything? I mean, look at the horrible things that are happening in this world, on the, God, I can name all sorts of incidents or things that you may suggest that love could not be orchestrating everything. How about, when I lost my, I don't know, my partner or so, or the things that are painful that are happening to me? How could you say that love is orchestrating all of that? It's very understandable logically. But let's see if maybe what I'm going to share with you may help you see things a little different. Love is wholeness, is what you are. Love is not that little you who think that feels love for something or someone or thinks that loves or not. What you are is love. Love is wholeness. Love is everything. This human experience is an experience of separation. You see? Therefore, is fragmentation. Everything is orchestrated for the purpose of love to recognize itself as whole, as oneness, as everything. Okay? Now, pay close attention. Love is not the one that would say makes the horrible things that you may think that may be happening. Love is resting in the essence of being, and everything that seems to be happening is an opportunity that love is using to remind itself the truth of what love is. Meaning that every experience that seems to be happening within this whole world, this seeming projection, including the me that I think I am, all of that is mysteriously orchestrated, not so that I can suffer, but so at some point I begin to stop believing the content of the mind and start withdrawing the attention from illusion so that I can recognize myself as love. You see? Because love is not interested in perpetuating separation, which is the cause of fear. Love is only interested in remember that love is all that there is, in recognize itself as wholeness. The seeming appearance, the world of appearances, is a projection, and because it is a projection, is dualistic. And because it is dualistic, has to have the pole of opposites. You see? I cannot say this is beautiful unless there's its opposite. Without its opposite, there's no beautiful and there's no ugly. There's just what is. You see? In other words, imagine you're dreaming, right? You're in bed sleeping and you're dreaming. If the dream would be so wonderful that everything is, that you would not want to wake up from it, what would be your motivation to return? Well, you're not returning, but what would be your motivation to know yourself as the dreamer of the dream if the dream is so wonderful and you wouldn't want it to, and you like the way it is? Well, if this world was so, if everything goes according to what we think it should, what would be our motivation to awaken from this seeming world of appearances? And yes, the mind could say, yeah, but if everything was wonderful, then what's wrong with continue sleeping? Again, the problem is that we cannot compare the world of appearances, as wonderful as it may be, is a world of change, is a world of transitions. There's a birth and a death. Nothing is permanent. And you cannot compare the impermanency of this experience with the permanency of the love that you are always, that never changes. You see? If you knew who you are, you would not be affected by the content of the dream, and everything you could say that is orchestrated, not so that you suffer, but so that you begin to withdraw the attention from the dream and consequently don't experience the consequence or the outcome of believing the content of the mind. In other words, if you're sleeping and you're dreaming, if you believe in the dream, you will experience the psychological consequences of that. You are not affected by the dream because the dream cannot have any effect on you. The monsters in the dream cannot come to the bed and do anything to you. You're safe and sound, but as long as you believe in the monsters of the dream, you'll experience the psychological consequences, which would be fear. Even when you're in bed, safe and sound, you're petrified, you're sweating, you're even screaming sometimes. You see? Just because you're believing the content of the mind. Well, in this world of appearances, when you forget that you are loved, you start beginning to believe the content of the dream and you overlook the fact that love is what you are. And everything you could say that is orchestrated for the sake of never losing sight of what you are. There's need not to be concerned about the details in the movie. It's never losing sight that if there's no judgment on it, there's no interpretation on it, then the movie will unfold as it will, but I remain as I am. This is what these videos are pointing to. I remain as the peace that I am, as the love that I am, which is not personal, although the fragrance can be experienced through the seeming personal. For example, right now you know that you are, but even if it appears that you're a separate individual, when the mind is not identified with the content, when the mind is simply not believing the thoughts content, you can feel the peace, the underlying peace. You could say that that would be the love we're pointing to, even when the world of appearance may seem to be very chaotic. Because now you know who you are. These videos are pointing to what you are. They're not pointing or not trying to fix anything in the dream. And now you may say, but that means that I should let everything be as it is and not take any actions? Again, let's look closely. When you know who you are, you're resting in that peace that surpasses all understandings, and whatever actions, because they're going to happen anyway, there'll be a reflection of that state of mind. An example could be within the world of appearances. If there's a belief that there's a me and there's a you and there's this seeming appearance, well, it seems as though there was a person or a character called Jesus, okay, who, when people were trying to stone the prostitute, he didn't go out there going crazy. What are you doing? Are you crazy? You shouldn't do that, or whatever. Maybe they would stone him if he would have done that. Within the recognition that this world is an appearance, there's no stoners and no prostitute, that there's nothing, because it's not the real world. However, within the play, within the character he was playing, he did take action. What did he say? Those who have never committed a sin, cast the first stone. You see? And interestingly enough, that was the wisest thing to say in that situation, because he was not identified with the content of the mind. He was resting in the peace that he is, and he was acting accordingly. And some may suggest that when all the people, the merchants, are in the temple and he went out and throw the tables and everything out, well, you could say that maybe that was the way to get the attention within that context that may not appear to be very peaceful, but maybe if he would have walked in there and say, hey guys, come on, don't do this, they would have just laughed at him. Well, maybe he needed to do something a little bit more drastic. But that's just basically part of the moment experience when the mind is resting in the fact that, in the beingness that I am. Well, you see, action is taking place. But we don't need to get concerned about that. I just use those examples to show you that what is referred to as spontaneous or an action happens as a consequence of a mind that is not identified with its content. You see? So right now, if you believe that you're this individual, you're identified with that content, and consequently, you'll be identified with every content that throws at you, even the content that suggests that love look in a particular way. But right now, you simply are. And we're resting in that. And see how life unfolds, how life plays out. And now, because there's a recognition that love is all there is, and that's what I am, I cannot help but to see love in everything, because everything is a reflection of me. I am, everything is I am everything, because that's all there is. And whatever seems to be happening that brings discomfort is an opportunity that love is offering me to say, hey, you're feeling the discomfort because you're judging the experience, because you are believing the content of the mind, you're believing the thoughts about it. How about if you use that opportunity to withdraw the attention from the content of the mind and rest in the beingness that you are, which is referred to as the peace that surpasses all understanding, and rest in there. And that's how you can see how love is basically working for the recognition of itself. If you're sleeping and you're dreaming, the dream that may seem very chaotic, the gift in there is that the mind is giving itself an opportunity to start withdrawing the attention from the dream. You see? Because again, if the dream was comfortable, what would be the reason for the mind to wake up? Well, same here. If everything was so wonderful, lovey-dovey and whatever, which is, what sometimes we would wish, but again, if everything was going your way, what would be your motivation to recognize yourself as wholeness? And wholeness is everything, it's cannot be compared with the smallness, the breadcrumbs that we experience as a consequences of believing that I'm a separate entity. This is a breadcrumb in the myth of a buffet. But if I'm identified with the content of the mind, which is putting the attention on breadcrumbs, I'm overlooking the fact that the buffet is what I am. I am wholeness, I am everything, and I am. And this is what these videos are pointing to, and consequently now you can see that it's orchestrating everything beautifully so that it can recognize itself as the love that I am, that you have always been and you will always be. And well, this is the inspiration that came through. You may hear some explosions. This is because there's a big celebrations here in Valencia, Spain, and they're beginning now, so we think that this video is coming to an end. So as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can become evident.